whatever time you watch this, welcome. It is Monday, weekend is over, so I figured let's do some lessons, and titled today about understanding the evolution of free energy and the homopolar motor, originally discovered, patented, invented in its crudest and initial forms by Michael Faraday himself. And we're going to watch first a presentation by Aaron Murakami. Those who do not know Aaron, well, it's a name you should be very familiar with in the free energy community, electrical engineering. Works with Eric Dollard, Peter Lindman, and a whole bunch more. But yeah, well, if this is your first introduction to his work, or you're familiar with it, I will hit play, and I will be stopping intermittently to put my thoughts into things, as well as give examples of several of the other partner co-creator channels' works relates to exactly this, specifically Mike over at Faraday Research, his work replication of the Bruce De Palma's N machine, just a more advanced version of a homopolar motor, and then how it relates into what Aaron's describing and showing, and yeah, we'll go from there and see how we're feeling. Might do a second video, but for now, Aaron's awesome presentation lecture.
Myself, I'll just so high voltage homopolar generator. So just a little background, of course I'll run through it, is that this is something that I came up with quite a few years ago. And on the homopolar generator, it's a special generator that produces hardly any usable voltage, but it can produce a massive amount of current. And in almost every single variation, that's always been the case. They've just done that more efficiently in some ways than others to crank up the amount of current using different kind of brushes and this kind of stuff, and to increase the efficiencies. So
key first point that Aaron makes there is that the homopolar motor puts out more current, very low voltage, but high current in this system, which can be engineered into an over unity or free energy system, essentially. And he gives examples of how experimenters have used the back EMF then going into electrolysis, and it is able to give exponential overproduction on Faraday's electrolysis hydrogen scale. And that's something I'm going to be researching more and applying into my own experiments. But I will let Aaron continue describing and explaining.
Homopolar generator is something that's not even supposed to work. It's not even supposed to exist according to conventional electromagnetic laws and how magnets interact with conductors and so forth. The Faraday homopolar generator shouldn't even really produce anything, and you'll kind of see why when I show a couple pictures of the basic concept. And so Michael Faraday, in the early 1800s, he formulated a lot of the basic laws involving electromagnetism. And he was an English scientist. And so electromagnetic induction, diamagnetism, and electrolysis is what he's known for. So you might hear like Faraday law of electrolysis, which says...
So boom, right there, Faraday law of electrolysis. And this is the second key point Aaron makes and describes here, and that I'm going to be doing a follow-up episode specifically applying this work into my own electrolysis experiments and start using it.
For a certain amount of electricity you're putting through the water, you're only going to be able to separate so much hydrogen from oxygen and those type of things. And so when you hear his name, he's the one that actually invented what's known as the homopolar generator. So the first variation of a homopolar generator that he came up with in 1831 basically looked like this. What it is kind of a horseshoe-shaped magnet that you can see on the left side labeled A. I don't know if that laser pointer shows up there. And in between that horseshoe-type magnet, you have a conductor, which could be something like a copper, for example. Now, if you rotate with that crank, the rotor labeled D, right there, and you spun it while the magnet stays still, you can get some voltage and some current out of it. And but one of the interesting things about it is as you're pulling the electricity from it, you can't feel any backwards torque against your hand turning the wheel, which means it's kind of like a drag-free generator. So typically, if you have like a gas generator, for example, the gas generator, you got the gasoline.
So, and that was another key thing. The third key thing Aaron brings up is the negative or zero torque generator. Let's hear that again. And right here showing Faraday's original homopolar generator with the U magnet, and then this copper disc, and then the two brush motor connections to motor, making it work
out of it. And but one of the interesting things about it is as you're pulling the electricity from it.
Yeah, I saw your comments on it, Nathan, and good morning, good day. Feel free to join in if you want to add your thoughts on this and stuff, if you're free. Not in the work.
You can't feel any backwards torque against your hand turning the wheel, which means it's
torque. So no backwards torque. And that right there is a very, very key component of Mike over at Faraday Researches with his flywheel and homopolar generator aspect of his builds, specifically the N machine projects. Oh, good morning, Gerald, as well. Good day, Nathan and Gerald. Either or, if you're free, feel free to join in or just enjoy watching whatever you're up to. Glad to see you and thinking of you while doing this, of course.
It's kind of like a drag-free generator. So typically, if you have like a gas generator, for example, the gas generator, you got the gasoline powering an engine. That engine is like the prime mover, the main mover that moves your generator. And as a generator is turning, if you're not pulling any electricity from that generator, it just kind of sits and the engine will just run at idle. And so do any of you have experience that when you actually plug something maybe into a generator that it kind of RPM kind of kicks up a little bit to kind of compensate for that load? And
boom, right there, 0.4. When you put a load into like a gas diesel generator, anything that's like, you know, it takes that drag off. But in these drag-free systems, it's that you plug something in and it doesn't notice that it's now powering that, generating. Thus, it's not taking away from your overall or initial energy into the system. And then to get that over unity aspect of it, with the what seems to be the magnetic or like superconductive reactions that they, as they accelerate and get colder, that the more you plug in, like the faster, colder it gets, or something like that. Anywho, getting a little off topic. Back to Eric explaining the system of getting the zero drag, and that's also a key component of rest in peace Paul Babcock, and as well as Jim Murray's works, also who work with Aaron Murakami here.
And it kind of bogs down the motor. Well, imagine if you had a gas generator, whereas you're drawing electricity from it, it just idles, and the front motor doesn't even know that you're taking any electricity.
And boom, absolutely, Nathan, 100%, right? Because the amps, that's like the hot electricity, the heat component of current, where the voltage is more the cold electrical aspect, if that makes sense. But the amps also what they say kills or harms. Welcome, Nathan. And you're bang on with that comment there, that in these homopolar systems, because they do high current but low voltage, that all you need to do is then engineer how to use that high current, the amperage that it's generating.
Electricity from the generator.
What's up, guys?
It'd be pretty profound and world changing. Actually, Paul Babcock and Jim Murray have succeeded in a pretty advanced way doing exactly that. This is just one of the most.
Well, ain't that a synchronicity? Gerald saying he's testing a zero drag on an alternating system today. Feel free to join and give a demo if you want. And good morning.
By the way, this guy's not realizing in here that all he has to do, he's getting heavy amps, he's not getting heavy volts, right? But they all want to measure the volts and they have no idea. You have to change the frequency and you have to change the temperature, and then you'll get more volts. That's about as simple as it gets. Or you can just run it through a DC flyback, which takes it like a ZVS when it's pulsed, and it drives it to a high voltage where you can spark gap it 3 times, and then it'll break that diode that puts it through on the DC flyback, and it'll make it into pure line voltage. Then you just do it a normal way to convert it over to your house. That's about as simple as it gets. If you don't understand how volts and amps work and how they work in conjunction with each other, you won't understand this, and you'll keep trying to convert something that doesn't need to be converted in that way. You just need to understand it's a total watt for a reason. They calculate it in watts because it's the amount of volts and amps, but they'll fluctuate based on the frequency. If you simply raise the frequency, it raises the amount of volts, and it'll lower the amount of amps. You don't need heavy conversion. You just need to understand it.
Right. And although I love how you're like, it's so simple, and then list off like 10 different complex aspects, but once you understand it, it is exactly that, extremely simple. But it's the aspect that academic mainstream electrical engineering like intentionally misdirects that exact understanding of how it actually works.
Well, just super cool the exit of the line that comes out with amps. It'll change it into volts and amps, and you'll get a more mixed signal then. Your temperature is your amps. That's why they're getting heavy temperature off of this based on the way they built it. That's why they're getting so many amps. They're dealing with pure friction.
So then the next step I want to add in is then applying this amperage and energy into current into my electrolysis experiments, doing comparisons and seeing if I can get extra increased hydrogen production rates from the energy being generated from it. And that would make a lot of sense, especially with the extra heat energy of the amperage. And as you increase the temperature of the electrolysis reaction, you get a higher hydrogen reaction rate going on as well. So,
hey, Bernie, I'll be right back. I got to bring somebody to work.
No worries, brother. We'll see you in a bit. Drive safe.
Old school original types of so-called drag-free generators, which means the prime mover doesn't know that you're pulling electricity from it. The thing about this is that it was very inefficient, and primarily inefficient due to counterflows of current, which means current can start flowing in all kinds of different directions. So it's not like a cohesive movement of it, and that was one of the primary problems with the efficiency. While current flow was induced directly underneath the magnet, the current would circulate backwards in regions outside of the influence of the magnetic field. This counterflow limits the power output of the pickup wires and induces wasted heat on the copper disc. Later, homopolar generators would solve this problem by using an array of magnets arranged around the disc perimeter to maintain a steady field around the circumference and eliminate areas where counterflows would occur. Is anybody familiar with Bruce De Palma? Quite a few.
Yeah.
Raise your hand if you don't know who Bruce De Palma is. So Bruce De Palma was an educator at, he was a teacher at MIT. He was involved with a lot of the, I think, pioneering methods behind the Polaroid company and a lot of the film development stuff. He developed some strobe imaging techniques to be able to look at these like time-lapse kind of things where you could see, if something is moving, you'd see it in different stages of movement. And so he's actually pretty well known for a lot of different things. If you search his name online, you're going to find a whole lot of things, and a lot of it has to do with rotating masses, magnetism, and a lot of other things that demonstrate some anomalous behavior, such as objects falling faster than they're supposed to, or objects being launched in the air that accelerate faster than they're supposed to. Peter Lindemann, I don't know if he's in the room here, but he worked with Bruce De Palma for a long time. John Bedini knew Bruce De Palma way back. Eric Dollard's had, I think, meetings with Bruce De Palma. And so he was kind of one of the early pioneers in the field that became pretty well known. And a lot of his work has yet to be contested in a way that nobody has really come forward and has disproved his experiments. The skepticism that I've seen on some of his work, both related to this so-called homopolar generator technology, some of the other stuff he's working on are completely bogus and false claims against him. So when you read stuff dismissing Bruce De Palma's work, they really don't know what they're talking about.
And boom, right there, point number 5 Aaron makes, which is crucial, is that the skeptics and the so-called debunkers, they're just, oh, no, it's nothing. Oh, it's fake. Oh, it's BS. Oh, fraud. And it's like, no, like this, literally, you're undereducated. You have no idea what you're talking about, or you're intentionally misleading. You look into it. Oh, first step, Michael Faraday inventing the original, then Bruce De Palma's the next generation evolution step of it. His machines and designs of these homopolar generator devices being, he called the N machine. Mike over at Faraday Research making a few generations of these as well, originally reproducing Bruce De Palma's work.
So in 1977, Bruce De Palma advanced the concept of the homopolar generator in a way where he did something that's not even really supposed to work, as a lot of things that are common in this field that many of us seen that do work. So with this, he discovered that rotating the magnets together with the conductor still created a constant voltage. Now, if you're not too familiar with these concepts with magnetism and moving with conductors and stuff, if you go back to the first one, it's kind of fairly known even by people who don't have a strong background in electrical engineering or anything, that to get a voltage out of an electromagnetic coil, you have to sweep a magnet over it. So for example, if you put electricity into the coil, you create a magnetic field. And inversely, if you swing a magnetic field over that coil, you get electricity out of it. So they're, kind of a reversible type of process.
So exactly what Aaron's talking about there. For a coil, you put a magnet through it, which would create an EM field. Or if you connect current into the coil, then the coil creates its own electromagnetic field from that.
But the main point is that the conductor, with the copper wire, for example, or the magnet, they always have to be moving independently of each other. in whatever frame of reference. They have to be moving like this. And so what Bruce De Palma is showing is that if you take a disk magnet, like let's say the one on the left, and you have south on one end, north on the other end, and if you just rotate that magnet, and I believe that Alnico type magnet would have a conductive coating on it of maybe nickel or something like that, similar to some of the neodymium stronger magnets today, is that the magnet coating itself is a conductor, but as that magnet rotates, isn't the magnet rotating together with the conductor and not independently of each other? So if you rotate the conductor and the magnet together at the same time, like on a common shaft, you're not supposed to be able to create any kind of electricity because they're not moving independently of each other. But the fact is that if you take a voltmeter, for example, and you put it on a spinning magnet like this, and you have the positive on the perimeter of the magnet, and you take a negative and you put it on the shaft of the spinning magnet, you actually develop a voltage. It's not supposed to happen. What's even more interesting is that it's actually very, very small voltage. It's almost pretty much unusable voltage for the most part in most people's experiments. Is what they're going to find is, they're lucky to get, millivolts spinning a magnet like this at, a couple thousand RPM. But what they find is that it proportionally creates a massive amount of current. And so they've actually made, a lot of commercial homopolar generators for low voltage, high current applications, such as different welding applications and stuff like that. Pretty sophisticated units. And so it's not just like an anomaly that, just shows up here and there. That's actually being exploited at the industrial level. But this main issue is, well, you just have this low voltage. And so there's a lot of applications that they haven't really applied it to, because what are you going to do with, very super low voltage and a lot of current? And so the second image that you see in figure B is basically two sets of magnets on either side of a conductor, and that thing going down the middle there is basically like a copper disc, or it could be brass or any type of non-ferrous, non-magnetic type metal that's being used as a conductor. And the same thing, if you have a shaft running through there, and if you rotate that, you're going to find the same thing. You get voltage between the perimeter of it and at the on the shaft. You get a voltage potential difference. And so, but again, in any of these configurations, they're always going to show current, but virtually no voltage. Now, this slide, I don't know if this is kind of cut up. This is basically the same concept. This is just kind of an older, neat hand-drawn diagram of this concept using ceramic magnets. Now, the reason for using the copper conductor in the middle is that a lot of those magnets didn't really have a conductive coating like a lot of the neodymium magnets we have today. So conceptually, you can do this type of experiment, and you don't need a copper conductor. Is if you have like one big neodymium magnet, well, the whole coating is conductive, and so you can just use that as a conductive layer. So you don't really need these the copper in between. Now, a couple things that Bruce mentioned about the end machine is what he named it. This concept where the conductor and the magnet rotate together and creates electricity when it's not supposed to, is that the generator, being a motor, also elicits a torque output in opposition to the drive, engine torque. This is why an engine generator combination slows down when an electrical load is thrown on the generator. What is important about the end machine is that unlike conventional generators, which exhibit a rotational drag when current is drawn, the end machine exhibits no such drag. So you think about it, if you have anything out there spinning, and if you had a magnet on it, you could tap it on the edge, and you can tap it on the shaft, you can pull electricity off there without bogging down a thing that's spinning. And so you can electrically isolate different ones, and you can have multiple ones on there, and as long as it's spinning and you got the flywheel effect and you just have enough to make up for the loss there, you got the thing spinning, and conceptually you can keep drawing a lot of electricity off there, but whatever's turning that shaft doesn't know that you're drawing electricity. That's the whole point about a low back EM or a no drag generator. It means no drag is produced when you're drawing electricity from it. Paul Babcock, Jim Murray, and some others have demonstrated through this conference some of those type of concepts, and they're kind of involved in these kind of concepts, but more sophisticated devices. But what's neat about this end machine concept is that it's simple enough that most builders and experimenters, even if you don't have a lot of background in any of this, you can actually experiment with this on small scale just to kind of see the effect, and we'll get into a little bit more about that. This is one diagram from Bruce Palma, basically kind of showing the same thing, gets into some technical details, what you see that's kind of interesting in regards to the 3 battery system is that when RS, and what Peter showed last year, the 3 battery rotation system, then RS showed where you got a plus minus, and then you reverse a battery and you go minus minus and then plus. You got 24 volts here and you got 12 volts here, yet you can light a light bulb between the 2 positives. And so it's kind of important for people to kind of get out of the mindset of polarity, because polarity is really kind of irrelevant. It's all about the potential difference. You can have 2 negative potential differences and you can draw electricity from it, and they can both be in the negative range. And so it's about potential difference. And so if you got 2 12-volt batteries for 12, one flipped 2 12-volt batteries for 24 volts, and you reverse one 12 volts against that, well, 24 minus 12 is going to be 12 volts, which means between the positives on those batteries, you actually have a 12 volts. And that's why this system works, and the one Peter Lindemann went over. But it's kind of interesting because De Palma kind of details that there's a similar kind of process with the potential difference being created in this type of system. Now, Bruce De Palma was ahead of everybody in this, and then somebody named Adam Trombley, who is recognized as one of the leading authorities on this end machine type of homopolar generator concept. And right around 1980, I couldn't find the exact year quick enough, is that he basically filed for a patent for a closed path homopolar generator, which took the efficiency quite a bit above what Bruce De Palma was able to accomplish. And he filed patents in the US and overseas, and instantly, I believe the Pentagon put a gag order on him right away because it's obviously demonstrating massive amounts of overunity, which I didn't even really mention yet, and that's not my claim for this presentation tonight. It's to show you a principle. But the Pentagon was working on the exact same solution that it seems Adam Trombley came up with at the same time that Bruce De Palma actually wound up, I think, going in that direction. And so somebody else that many of you may be familiar with is Tewari over in India, who developed some of these pretty sophisticated end machines or homopolar generators. And I think one of the things he did was he contacted Adam Trombley, asked for his permission to be able to replicate his work, and he gave him the blessing and just mutual respect to at least ask him if he doesn't mind him experimenting with his method. And I believe what one of the early concepts was that what Tewari did was he took a certain amount of electricity, voltage and current, through some type of electrolysis cell and measured how much gas you're freeing up from it, which is going to go pretty much strictly by Faraday's law of electrolysis. So he knew that much electricity directly to the cell was giving X amount of gas. Then what he did was he took that same amount of electricity and he put it into the end machine or homopolar generator. And what I didn't mention is that if you have the magnet.
So right here is exactly what I am going to start doing in regards to my own experiments and coming up with several new experiments regarding exactly this, putting in, measuring the different amounts of voltage, current, and amperage energy going into my different electrolysis systems and comparing them with the standard, and again with Faraday's electrolysis system.
And the conductor rotating together, you can pull electricity out of it. Well, if you put the positive on the edge of the magnet and the negative on the shaft from like a battery, it's going to draw a lot of current, but that magnet will actually spin like a motor. So you can use it as a motor or a generator just by putting electricity to the shaft and the perimeter of a magnet on a shaft, and it will spin like a motor. And so what Tewari did was he took that same amount of electricity that created a known amount of gas in his electrolysis experiments and used that to, I believe, run like a homopolar generator. And then he took the output of the homopolar generator on the generator side to electrolyze gas and wound up with like 300 or 400% more gas than what he was supposed to, simply by going through that process, showing that there's some type of anomalous energy gain going on with these homopolar generators. And from the beginning, for over 100-something years, it's always been thought that the homopolar generator, Faraday's homopolar generator, is kind of one of the keys to free energy somehow, It wasn't really kind of nailed down what it is. Today, nobody really still knows what it is. I have my idea and theory on it that I'll put out here, but nobody has really kind of figured it out. Actually, last night I heard a description by Professor Harlick, which was the first time that it ever kind of made sense. We're not going to get into that, but I'm going to have to learn more about that again, because it was the first thing that I ever heard that is the most plausible explanation of why it works, outside of my own idea that I thought was pretty plausible. And so, and being drag free, you know, not drawing down the input, there's some window.
Drag-free systems. It's what it's about. And Gerald, you can't just bait us with this. Like, if you're doing it today, this is synchronicity, and you got to join and do it live. Once these presentations are done, you know, finish her off with the next generation. And what a sync that would be with, you know, the title of Free Energy and understanding the evolution of it, and, you know, demonstrating yours with, you know, literally the next generation of this technology. But yeah, either way, look forward to seeing and hearing your results. And what
We'll hear that's pretty interesting. So other innovations, you know, and that's just DC, direct current, not pulsed or anything. You get the steady DC current, low voltage, high amps. So other variations people have looked at are different ways to basically, you know, produce AC. You can produce AC, you can put in transformer, you might be able to raise the voltage and do different things. And the first, and I'll get into that in a second, well, actually it's coming up right next, is that, so getting AC to come out of a homopolar generator, which wasn't supposed to be possible because it's just a direct current effect. Increasing the voltage, which isn't supposed to be possible. You know, you're working with millivolts, and but there's always a way around something, and a lot of things are going to be a lot simpler than you think. And usually, a lot of the best solutions that you're ever going to see are going to be so simple, you're going to, you know, you're going to wonder why you didn't think of it. Literally. So, Peter Linneman and Michael Knox. I've seen a couple different patent applications and patents on different people trying to go in the direction of this AC homopolar stuff. A lot of it is so ridiculously complicated. I stopped reading the patents, because if they have to go through, you know, 20 steps to come around to do one thing, then they're definitely on the wrong track. And so one of the good things about Peter, Michael Knox, and a lot of these guys who are working in borderlands, including Eric Dollard, is that, you know, they're looking for the simple approaches. You know, they're looking for what works. They do the experiments on the bench. It's not a lot of crazy theorizing and stuff. You know, they'll get into a lot of the theory, but they actually show results. And so in this, I'm going to show you a video. I think it's maybe about 20 minutes. It's an excerpt.
Boom, real science, actually showing results, actually doing the tests, actually, you know, recording and sharing the experiments and the results. And that's what real science is. And this is the real science of free energy. And these, well, they're pillars, they're legends in the free energy community, just like John Bendini, just like Paul Babcock, RIP, just like Jim Murray, just like Eric Dollard, just like Aaron Murakami, that we're listening to, Peter Linneman, that he's about to play a video of. And I believe the video we're watching is about 10 years old, maybe a little newer, but I'm pretty sure it's about a decade. And now Aaron, at that time, playing a video of Peter Linneman's work 20 years prior to that, in the early 80s, and describing the Badlands, I guess, series or workshops or something like that. But what Peter Linneman and his partner Michael were doing back then, and what you're about to watch.
Out of one of the old Borderland videos where Peter Linneman and Michael Knox are showing their variation of how they discovered how to get AC out of the homopolar generator, out of the N machine. And that's an important step, not only because they're doing it, but they're doing it in such a simple way. Anybody can really replicate it. And ever since then, nobody has really picked up on it and moved it further and advanced it. But it's been sitting there in the Borderland videos for, I don't know, 20-something years or whatever. And, it's not going to be monster output or anything. But the thing is once you prove a principle, all you got to do is exploit it and scale it up. And so, it's a learning process. So this video right here, I think this is about maybe 20 minutes. I'm going to play this, and then we'll wrap the presentation up, and then I'll do a demo, and then we'll take questions after. Let's see, that's full screen.
What we have is we have the new.
Okay, just a second.
The old being the conventional Faraday disc, where you rotate a disc in a magnetic field, and then the subsequent studies that were shown also in this journal of 1888 of rotating magnetism with the disc and creating an EMF. And what we discovered was a way to create an AC EMF so that one could get rid of the problem of how to convert DC into AC. And an explanation. Hi, Peter? Yes.
Basically, what we've done, Michael and I have worked together for many years, and we've run literally hundreds of experiments together. And we've always been interested in the early Faraday work. In his journal of 1831, Faraday showed that when you rotate a magnetized cylinder and put a probe at the edge and at the center or the shaft, that an EMF, a pure direct current of extremely low voltage and a high current, is produced. Both of us have worked with a gentleman here in Santa Barbara who has worked with this phenomenon for a long time. His name is Bruce De Palma. And we've both been very interested in this work for many years. But the problem with developing this phenomena for energy production has to do with the fact that most...
Yes, sir.
Did you watch the Bruce De Palma video after this?
I'm not sure. You're gonna have to bring that up, and we should definitely play it. And what legends all of these people are, and that all of this work is based off of their originals, but then applying it to our own designs and thoughts and methods, and
he uses mercury in order to convert. So
yes,
we'll have to watch it afterwards.
Right, mercury arc rectifiers from DC to AC are apparently the most efficient and longest lasting, and it's why aren't they everywhere? And 100 years ago they were used absolutely everywhere.
But he's cooling it, so he's trying to get it close, because mercury becomes a superconductor when supercooled. So where is the point where you can have it still in a liquid state but pull on properties of a supercooled mercury, right? So is it right before it turns to a solid? So what he's doing is he's using the amps in the motor itself in order to heat the mercury just above freezing. So then he can use that as a superconductor in order to pull the electricity out of the motor without it even touching it.
Right. So that's the genius key of getting the super efficiency going in your system to then be able to harness free energy and usable energy out of systems, right?
Bruce De Palma understood heat. So when you're done, I'll bring it up, Bernie, and you can watch it.
Sounds good. Perfect reference to what Peter Lindman and Aaron are talking about here.
Of the appliances that we have today operate at about 120 volts and about 1 ampere. And this device is more capable of producing about 1 volt and thousands of amperes. So the question is, how do we get the energy out of such a device and make it useful for the kinds of equipment that our society uses today? Many of the experiments which have been done have seriesed these types of discs and created many disc brushes and compounded the mechanical problems of the device to the point where they're very inefficient simply from the mechanical loss standpoint. We decided we wanted to run some experiments to better understand the fundamental principle of how this phenomena was generating electric currents in the first place. And so we started building a number of disks. And to first understand the phenomena, what we did was, instead of using a big disk magnet, we just took one piece of magnetic material and just glued it onto one end and turned this disk and started looking at the outputs through an oscilloscope. And what we found was that there was a little lump every time the magnet went by our probe, that there was a little jolt in the current, and other than that, there was nothing. So we came up with this configuration here, which we're calling the new one for 1987. I think we first ran this experiment last year, 1986.
You must interject, it was Michael Knox, Peter Lindemann, and Chris Carson.
Chris Carson, who were originally in the shop when this experiment was run at first. And it came out of long discussions by the three of us over just what was going on. And at one point, we decided we didn't know at all what was going on, so we proposed this experiment, which was clearly not discussed in any of the literature before. And we basically thought that this was a completely insane type of experiment to run, because if anything occurred on this disk at all, it would certainly be self-shorted out, and it shouldn't have shown anything under current understandings of electricity. So we ran the experiment, and lo and behold, it produced an alternating current output, and we want to demonstrate that for you right now. We have here the device. We have a small drive motor here coupled to a disc. This first disc here, which has 4 rectangular magnets glued on. And just to make sure that the magnets don't fall off, we have another disc glued on the back of it here, and then it's wrapped in copper wire, which would certainly short everything else out if these discs weren't sufficient to short everything else out. So this disc is a total short around, and we have one brush at the center of the shaft here at the end, and another brush riding here at the edge of the disc at approximately the point at which the magnets come to an end. And these 2 probes going directly to the oscilloscope. We want to just basically state that the level of magnetism in this machine is extraordinarily low. The speeds we will run it at are also quite low. And but we wanted to demonstrate that you can produce an alternating current waveform directly out of a disk type of device of this nature, and that more research should be done in this area, because this is a very excellent way of getting the power out of a disk type of device that produces very high currents and low voltages, because the output of this can be put directly into the primary stage of a transformer, and the voltage raised directly that way, without having to chop the DC with all kinds of mechanical solid-state apparatus. So we can just turn the motor on, and instantly the oscilloscope starts showing the waveform. If I turn it off again.
Let's also put our protective barrier on.
Oh yeah, just to protect ourselves in the shop, we take the precaution of putting this basket over the device, because should these are ceramic magnets, and we've used epoxies and other things, but this is, to be sure, a test device which has not been adequately balanced or protected in any way to keep the magnets on the device. We're creating very high centrifugal forces, and we're going to just turn this thing on now and run it at a very high speed, which may or may not disrupt the device on camera here, but we hope it won't. We've run it up to certain speeds before, and you can see the waveform here. Coming directly off the disk.
Can you explain where those meters are reading also, Peter?
These meters are reading the input power to the drive motor. So these meters are not significant under these circumstances. The only thing we're looking at here is the fact that you can create an AC signal directly off of a disk device of the style that Faraday originally discovered in 1831. Now, this is the typical arrangement whereby we're reading the potential difference between the center here at the shaft and the edge, the typical way the Faraday device was used. Now, we've set this system up so that we can change the position of the pickup brushes to a number of different locations to show that this phenomena is also capable of being produced in a number of different ways with this apparatus. As Michael is changing the location of the brush here, I'd just like to say that basically what we're doing, we had, for the first test you just saw, we had one brush on the shaft here, and another brush riding on the disc out at this location, so that as the different pole faces move past between these two brushes, they produce EMFs in opposite directions, as would be expected. What was interesting about this is that it produces any EMF at all, because all of the points on the shaft that would be producing these things are in direct short circuit with each other at an extremely low resistance.
Peter, is the frequency deemed by...
All right. So, yes, Anthony, that is Peter Lindman right there. Welcome, Gerald, as well. And the person you're hearing right as I paused the video, but Eric Dollard speaking as well. Like, this is a bunch of absolute legends and pillars in this, free energy development work and community, that this is history that needs to be seen and understood, and that's why I'm playing it.
Absolutely. That's borderland sciences. That's like classic. You know what I mean? Epic.
Did you guys understand
now? Sorry to interrupt, Nathan, but yeah, Gerald, like, I had never heard of it before watching this video, and then instantly it was like, okay, it's involving Peter Lindman, Eric Dahl, like everyone in there, and it's like, how had I never heard of this before?
I don't have this one, but I have a lot of the borderland sciences stuff in my old terabyte drive. I should pull it up for you and do it up. But what were you going to say, Nathan?
Did you guys understand why they changed the magnet configuration? They kind of glossed over it here, but in order to get an AC signal, it's got to go north-south, north-south. And by when it goes over each pole, that's what's giving you your sine wave. So in changing it, they went from a solid magnet into individual magnets, and that's what gave them their AC signal out. Now, it doesn't produce as much energy, though. It's an energy loss because they don't have enough magnetism in it now. But it does produce AC out of it. So,
yeah. Oh, darn it. Trying to get where it shows. Here we go. So right here, the north-south, like you were just describing, Nathan, with it. And what the key point of the homopolar motor is that, like this here with the magnet inside the coil, when it's static, it's not able to generate EM field or current, but if you're rotating it, the faster you rotate it, it actually does create specifically that. And that's the whole key of this technology of these homopolar motors, is spinning the magnetic or the magnet to create the EM field. And then here where they have the alternating poles of the magnetics, which then is able to create the AC sine wave out of it. All right. Any other thoughts or should play?
Nope.
Riding on the disc out at this location, so that as the different pole faces move past between these two brushes, they produce EMFs in opposite directions, as would be expected. What was interesting about this is that it produces any EMF at all, because all of the points on the shaft that would be producing these things are in direct short circuit with each other at an extremely low resistance.
Good mind, yeah.
Peter, is the frequency deemed by the RPM?
Yes, it's direct. It varies directly, as would be expected. What was interesting about this is that it produces any EMF at all, because all of the points on the shaft that would be producing these things are in direct short circuit with each other at an extremely low resistance.
Peter, is the frequency deemed by the RPM?
Yes, it's direct. It varies directly with the speed of the disc.
For one thing that I'd like to point out is the fact it was noticed on the oscilloscope by observation that the amplitude was nearly independent of RPM.
The amplitude varied at much less rate. As we sped up, the amplitude was getting slightly larger, but certainly not, it wasn't a linear rise.
So it's a direct departure from the law of electromagnetic induction.
And key point right there. And of course, that is Eric Dollard speaking on this key point of the wow, instant brain fart there.
Larger, but certainly not, it wasn't a linear rise.
So it's a direct departure from the law of electromagnetic induction.
There we go. Proper word. Direct departure from the law of electromagnetics. And these are the key aspects that a debunker channel that the algorithms are programmed to pump in front of the masses. So, you know, the 90% of the brainwashed academic community is like, oh, it's impossible. You can't break these laws. And it's like, here you have like one of the, I don't know, most senior epic legends and pillars of electrical engineering in over Unity Free Energy, Eric Dollard, pointing out in the system here that Peter Lindman and Michael made of different variations of N machines that directly violates the laws of electromagnetics.
But that's the thing, though, Bernie. The laws of electrodynamics or the laws of thermodynamics do not apply to systems that spin. They only apply to linear systems in the vacuum. And that's the big secret the scientific community and the academic community do not want you to know. Otherwise, you're going to start experimenting with spinning magnets and spinning magnetic fields. They don't want that. So automatically they start with that 3 laws of thermodynamics. Give me a break. They were written for linear equations.
3 laws that they don't even understand or intentionally misrepresent. The second law that they're always like, oh, you can't break the second law of thermodynamics, but it's like it only applies to a closed system. As soon as it's an open system or dynamic system, like you just explained, the spinning, the rotation aspect, that is now one dynamic of open system adding to it. And then it's like, so you add that spinning to other aspects, like bringing in radiant energy from the environment, like if it's endothermic cooling or from a plasma, right? All these other aspects that you start combining those dynamics of extra energies in that you're able to get the exponential gains in your systems.
But they don't want you to know that, and that's why it's kept a big secret. They automatically start spewing out the laws of thermodynamics and how entropy is an absolute must. Well, what if you were to have a closed circuit and an open circuit and use the entropy in order to power the system itself?
Exactly, right?
That's part of my presentation that's coming up. So,
boom, right there. And it's having multiple of the closed systems within the larger open system, and then through the induction.
Let it decay,
and
capture the decay, and use that decay to power the system itself. Sort of.
I got that, as well as getting it tuned to the right or same resonant coherent system within it, right?
Yeah, you don't want to break entropy. You want to use entropy. Use it for what it's worth. Look at the aspects of what it does. Look at what a closed system does, and then manipulate the system in order to have that entropy dump it all to you immediately and use it.
So let me ask you something, Gerald. Are you getting initial power loss in your main system when you're pulling from it?
It depends how much of a load there is, but the power loss is negligible. It's hardly worth mentioning. Like, I'm heating up 1,000-watt electric stove element, and I'm using 35 watts on the circuit.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I'm using entropy. I'm not letting entropy kill the system.
Right.
Exactly. And that's that's another way of explaining or describing what Aaron brought up at the beginning of it, and that you mentioned is a key part of what you're testing today, is the zero drag system, right? That
zero drag alternator will probably get me shot, but hey, I want something in my car that runs for free. Like, you know what I mean? I'm not even going to hook it up to the fan belt. I'm just going to turn it on and let it go.
We just got to start building them, and showing it as we build it, and just leave it as is on those aspects. Don't patent.
I did a tutorial on this.
Ooh.
That's my mithril halo coil.
Look at how small that is.
I love the name.
You should see what it does.
Is that gold and also silver, or just gold?
Yes, it is.
Beautiful. That's why it's the mithril coil.
Nice.
Yep, that's why I called it mithril, because of the way that when the light hits it, like, the camera doesn't do it justice, but when the light hits it, it looks like jewelry, like, just blings the eye, right? And the high frequency I get out of this doesn't start till it hits 1 megahertz.
Oh, wow. And that's gold, right?
That's gold and silver. It's 24 karat gold, plated copper, and 99% plated silver. You're not going to find, like, it's jewelry type wire, right? But you're not going to get anything out of it unless you know what to do with it. Because this thing even confused me.
I'm going to have to add one key part you're going to have to take into your calculations of that, with the gold being, yes, the 24 karat plated, calculating that mass, but then also calculating the atomic mass of the copper that makes up the majority of it.
See, I could have got pure gold and pure silver, and I was going to order that first. Well, it would have been a little pricey. This would have been like a $900 coil if I did that.
Oh,
but I don't want to do that because.
Well, yes, you do.
Gold and copper. So when power runs through copper, or so they say through, that's bullshit. It runs around it. It creates the field around the wire. It doesn't run through the wire. And this coil proves it, man. I'm telling you. I put power through here. I get nothing out. And I should. It doesn't make sense. But because it's coated in silver and gold, the frequency goes through the roof. And you can't catch nothing out of this sucker at lower frequencies. It doesn't even produce a magnetic field. Why? I'll get into that later. But this, telling you, next level. It's if you don't have the understanding and you start playing with this kind of stuff, you might create problems for yourself. So be very careful. I don't recommend this to the novice. This is to those that know what the fields are doing.
And what you just said right there is so crucial, and why I myself, I've made so many different coils, as well as also have one of, like, I think the second generation of Matt Rife's coil machine, but it's like I don't think it was properly designed, and it's like you don't want to mess with putting high energies and frequencies into it if it's not the correct wiring system and geometry. Yep. Because you can have very dangerous, harmful side effects when it's not in the correct geometric coherence.
Yeah, because it creates, there's constructive. Joe had mentioned this, and I had mentioned this prior, but Joe had mentioned this yesterday. There's constructive interference and destructive interference.
Right.
Constructive interference is something that you want to use in your system. It won't create a environment where things will degrade quicker or damage will happen or you get hurt as much. But when you create a destructive interference, it's like shooting bullets through you, right? You're talking electromagnetic fields at high rates that aren't meant to be put into the body. That's why the coil that you just mentioned, Matthew, I built two of them. I built this old one and I built this new one, and I did massive testing on it. I don't want to piss on the guy's parade, so to speak, but I wouldn't be playing with that particular configuration.
I wouldn't be. That's what it was. The major thing that's why I went against what he was doing, especially selling those configurated systems for such high prices when it's at the very least extremely experimental technology, yet like, but yeah, anywho,
that's why I don't sell my stuff like that, because you know what, until we all go through this, everybody builds these things, everybody tests, and then we actually get some university testing going on with this stuff, we're really not going to know the full side effects for years, right? I mean, I've been testing with this stuff for 17 years, and if it created any bad anomalies like cancer or whatever, right, I have it already, and I don't. So that's not a conclusive test by any means, but it is a sort of an indication as to when you get the right system, that's it. It isn't going to hurt you if that's
that you also have the respect and understanding and intuition throughout your years of experimenting, that when you start to feel like something that was negative, was harmful, that it's like you end it there, you don't continue on that path, and you especially don't like keep that system powered up and exposing your body and cells to it.
Exactly. Like Nathan, once you get shocked, you shut it down.
Right.
Right.
At least for a little while.
At least for a little while, yeah. Let that energy drain out of your body.
Yeah.
Yeah.
100%.
By the way, I brought up that quote from Nikola Tesla. I wasn't trying to ruin what you were doing, Bernie.
Oh, no.
It was just, he didn't like mathematicians about as much as we don't like them. So I just thought that was hilarious.
They say math leads you to the truth, right? I think math describes the truth.
Yeah, yeah.
It's like police officers. They say, "Oh, they're there to stop the problem. They're there to clean up the mess."
Fractal truth, right? It's like sets of fractal systems that are absolute, right? So it's like it's always an absolute, thus the truth, that you can't lie in that mathematical numbers and systems, because as soon as you change a number, the entire system collapses because it's been changed, right? And it no longer works.
They keep creating new math to identify the old math that didn't work. So when their equation doesn't work, then they have to create a new equation in order to fix that equation. That's the problem with math. There's no defining perimeters to it.
Yeah, and they're always adding caveats, right?
That's what I mean.
Well, we assume that this is the case so that we can have this equation work. Well, if the math doesn't work, it just doesn't work. You can't add stuff to it or assume, right? 1
Absolutely.
plus 1 is 2. When you have one item and you have 2 items, there's 2. What are you going to do? Oh, I think because we have this size and this size, we're going to take a total assumption of having 3. I don't know. Like you said, Nathan, the math has to work.
I gotta play devil's advocate just in that aspect, but not because I'm the devil, but because
No, please do.
of God, and that it's essentially God's system, what I see mathematics as, and that it's like we're not actually inventing any math, we're only discovering the different codes of the universe and system and dimensions, but that what was the main points of all of that I had? I forget. Hopefully it comes back.
I agree with you, Bernie. Math is God's system, but man's understanding of the system that God created may not be dead on, and that's why we're having.
Oh, exactly that's what it is that it has to be tested, right? It can't all be theoretical. First you come up with the theory, but that's just the first half. The second half is putting it to a test, and if you can't put it to test, then it's just bogus, or it sits there, and you have to focus on what you actually can test and prove in this part. Okay, now I remember what it was. And here's where 1 plus 1 actually can equal 4 or 3, and it's because 1 plus 1 can equal 3, and in those reactions it has to do with the field forces of plasma as well as atomic masses in nuclear exchanges, chemical reactions, stuff like that, where you might get extra isotopes out or subatomic particles.
Okay, but now like you're talking experimentation and reality.
So how to bring that back together and make it relevant is that when trying to figure out the overall universe or a certain mathematical system or any process, you have to test it and apply what you originally know, the initial structure of 1 plus 1 should equal 2, but then you have to look at all of the different variables, and sometimes there's just different mathematical subsets that apply to what you're working on, I guess, right? Like,
I just don't think that the math defines the experiment. I think it's the other way around. Go ahead, Nathan. Sorry.
Oh, I was just going to say, you first have to start out with a notion of something, then you build something, right?
Yeah.
Then you can theorize about what it's going to do. Then you prove it at the very end. So the math is the proof, is a verification that it's working right.
Yeah, so it's the
idea. Process there. You can't just jump to the end.
Exactly. It's the idea. It's the experiment. It's the theory explaining the experiment. It's the math explaining the theory.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's the way you have to do it. So as much as you want to jump to the end, you can't, because you have to individually see if something works and get some kind of a proof of concept before you move to the next stage. You can't amplify something that doesn't work.
You're right. And I think somewhere along the lines, academia started lifting up the theoretical physicists like they were the gods of academia for some reason. Meanwhile, all they are is dreamers. Because ultimately, what do theoretical physicists do? They dream about theories of things that might be.
Well,
do an experiment, find out.
Let me explain how it works. The bigger word that you use in multiple things. So you cut down the word and, you cut down the word to, you cut down some of those other words, and you start putting commas in there with big words. You sound smart. And in the end, when you look at somebody's work, you can clearly see that they were not smart, that they had no idea what they were doing. And that's the difference between all of this. You can say the big words and sound smart, or you could do the work and say simple words, because the work you do speaks volume.
Well, you can use big words to deceive, or you can do big words to actually explain things that you can build and make and test. So I thought out of the perfect example. So normally 1 plus 1 equals 2. A hydrogen plus a hydrogen equals you have 2 hydrogen. But you could then have a system of, say, cold fusion that, you know, Jeremiah replicated, that we showed, of you have one hydrogen plus one hydrogen equals one helium. So that's 1 + 1 actually equals 3 because you have the helium, or 1 + 1 can equal 4 because you get a helium, or you get either a helium plus a different isotope like
Hold
a
on.
neutron, or a hydrogen, I guess deuterium. Is that 2, or is that the isotope of 3? Anyways,
Deuterium happens after. Actually, I believe it's hydrogen, then deuterium, then tritium, and in between that,
yeah,
the release is helium.
So
I
is
could be wrong.
deuterium 2 hydrogen nuclei, though, I think, isn't it? Like,
I'm not sure.
I think, yeah, then tritium
So I
3,
can't
right?
say.
So it's the isotope of atomic mass of 2. So I think deuterium, I believe, has a more similar atomic mass to helium than hydrogen, and then tritium would be 3 hydrogen, I guess.
I've played with hydrogen a lot. I know what it takes to create helium, and it's not as hard as people think. But I just don't talk about it because I can't scientifically prove it. I don't have the equipment. But I can create it like that tomorrow. Just go get the parts and do it. There's a configuration that allows water to break so fast and so hard. It's amazing. And I've never seen anybody use it since I've done it. And it's simple. So
We're
I'm
gonna have
do it.
to do that on a private stream sometime, my friend.
Yeah, because you can't do it
I
live.
have also done the same in a few ways, and there's a few different methods. And when you combine them all, then we'll actually be able to have our normal hybrid powered cars that you just all of a sudden your diesel or gasoline bill doesn't
I like
exist
Meyer's
anymore.
idea. I don't want to create hydrogen. I want to use the power that it takes to break the molecule. When that molecule breaks between H2O, creates the 2 parts oxygen, or 2 parts hydrogen, and 1 part oxygen, the very break of it is like a, I won't say the word, clear explosion, right? It's so intense that if you can capture that very split, you don't need to have hydrogen accumulate and burn it off. You use the power of the split itself in order to power your vehicle. And then that way, when it recombines, it just goes back into water and it creates a complete closed loop.
100%. And
Meyer
I
was a
actually
genius.
believe that Malcolm Bendall's thunderstorm generator, a part of it incorporates that into it.
Yeah, that's the part that Paul Pantone created.
Yeah, exactly. Paul Pantone, 100%.
I love bringing that up because Malcolm Bendall.
But it needs to be brought up because it's used by the freaking fake debunkers to debunk Malcolm Bendall. But it's like, no, it actually verifies that it works. It's just that it was someone else's freaking discovery that was then added into his own. So no, that is the exact opposite of disproving it. It actually does the opposite and freaking gives you corroborating supporting evidence of it working, right? And then being applied.
I would support Malcolm Bendall a lot more if he would just outright say this is based on Paul Pantone's work, because that man sacrificed everything to get that information out. And the fact that somebody built a generator on his principle and just leaves him out of it, to me, it's kind of insulting. So I won't promote his work. I think he's.
I will promote the plasma unification model because it seems to work, especially in regards to Sheila Runman and stuff. But we're going to go over that hopefully the second half of this. But I also 100% agree with bringing up anytime the thunderstorm generator is mentioned or discussed, the fact that, like you stated, where we just stated, is 100% based off of the Geet generator by Paul Pantone. And for those that don't know the history of Paul Pantone, good place to watch it all and learn his stories and the technology is over at Tesla Tech channel by Steve Ellswick. And Paul Pantone literally thrown in jail a couple of times because he was actually getting organized, starting to manufacture these devices.
Yep.
And they had to
Opened a university in New Mexico.
Yeah, but guys, did you guys take into account the reason why he doesn't say his name? If you're bringing out a system that is maybe 10% efficient more than a base system, okay, or 20%, you don't want to be associated with somebody that did 120%. Okay, that's why you don't mention it, because you got to bring it out in a commercial way, and then for those who know what's going on, you can amplify it and get it right. But that's why you don't do it, because you have to get it out to the masses. And he knows the system can do it. It's a simple hose change, and then he created the correct thing. That's it.
All right. You changed my mind. Good point. Good point.
Right,
so now, I'll reserve my dissing on Malcolm Bendall. No offense, Malcolm, until we see what happens in the future with this tech, because you might be right, and then I'll eat crow, and I will apologize live because I've spoken against this multiple times, right? And I'm okay with that. I don't mind being wrong.
I think once it comes out of what he's doing, he's going to give him credit.
See, I say don't speak against, but speak out that people have to be educated that indeed it is based off of Paul Pantone's Geet, which was exponentially more efficient, and that, it's just one more aspect of the evolution and development of free energy processes and the science, and that it confirms the legitimacy of what Malcolm Bendall is doing, but
you could be right.
Main aspect off the Geet.
Yeah, you could be right. Hey, I love eating crow because then I learn something. I hope you're right, Nathan.
Once he shows his experiment going over Unity, he's done. They'll shut him down just like Pantone got shut down. Yeah, that's why you don't show it.
That's why I only show little lights going on, little LEDs, little voltages here and there. Because if you show what you can really do, if you can really do something, like you said, not only will they shut you down, you got to knock on the door. Because somebody's going to want to either buy it, suppress it, or take it. One or the other.
Well, it's like the carburetor they built in the 70s, where they understood that gas is what's actually making the thing, and not the fluid.
Yeah.
So they used the gas in the carburetor, and they shut every single one of them down. Or they used all the fumes in it. And we all do it. If you've never done it with your lawnmower, you probably should, because you can save a lot of fuel. But then they change the fuel so that it automatically degrades after 6 months.
Yeah.
Fuel today doesn't work the same as it did in the 70s. That stuff stayed for years.
Yeah, it did. You can stick it in a tank for 4 or 5 years and not worry about it. Now you got to add additives and all kinds of crap just to make it last.
Yep.
There was a gentleman in the city where I grew up who replicated that carburetor. My grandfather lived beside him. I even know exactly where he lived. And he got bought out because he realized that when he created this, and he was running 200 miles per tank, per gallon, I believe it was. Yeah, per 4 liters. And it was such an amazing discovery that he knew he would either get locked away or something would happen. So he took the money and he shut his mouth. And his whole life, I imagine he's passed away now because, he'd be passed away because he was in his 60s back in the 80s. But I don't know. Who knows? Maybe his family has the tech. Maybe he just shut his mouth and enjoyed the money. I don't know.
There was another young guy that was like late 20s, early 30s, and I think it was in the 70s or 80s, maybe even 60s, that invented like this ridiculously efficient carburetor. And he I guess got like a contract selling it to one manufacturer or something, and then like
Shell, I think.
yeah, and then like something went intentionally sideways where they then killed him, and it never saw the light of day as
They
well.
always do that.
It's possible.
Yeah. Well, I got the video saved of his story. I have to bring it up sometime. But
Oh, I believe you, Bernie. I believe you.
well, we got to cover all of them because it's
true.
technology that we got to start replicating, applying, and just using ourselves, right?
But then aren't we putting ourselves
Well,
at
not
risk?
just using, and it's like everybody does it together. You know, they can't kill everyone, sort of thing.
Well, that's okay. I've lived a good life. They come for me.
That's why it's making it open source. Everyone makes it at
Yeah.
the same time. Then there's nothing they can do.
Absolutely.
Just make sure you dull it down a little bit and just give it a little extra efficiency.
Exactly, right? But I'm not going to be making a straight water-powered car. I'm going to be making a water hybrid electric car. All
There you
right.
go.
So
See, and I always wondered about that. Why not create a really efficient electric car and put a small gas-powered generator in the trunk, have it exhaust out the back?
or
You're
hydrogen
creating
one.
not even 1/3 of the carbon that goes into the air. You still have an electric vehicle, and you could still drive forever. Just start your electric generator, gas-powered generator in the back. I don't know why anyone doesn't do that, but I guess
Wow.
the idea is go electric.
We all have to
Well, go
start.
hybrid. That way, everybody's happy, right? I don't. Just a thought.
Well, that's the goal. That's what we.
Yeah,
all have to do.
Phil was saying all you got to do is take your HHO generator and heat it because
Yes.
it turns into a gaseous state, so you can
Yep.
multiply it.
Yeah,
That was
the water.
pretty good insight.
That's beautiful because the water I was using when I did, I'd say half of my HO experiments, I boiled it first, made it
Me
extremely
too.
hot just to bring it to the edge, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Wow,
I did the
I'm telling
exact
you.
same testing it. That 100%. I do that with half
Yeah,
of them.
I got that in my notes. When he said that, I was like, yes, somebody else did it. Right? I
Don't
love
you
it.
worry.
Shout out to Phil.
I as well have been doing that many years.
That's the way to do it, man. But you know what? We don't think about bringing that stuff up to bring it out because a lot of the time it's a regular. It's like, well, you're heating up the water. Doesn't everybody do that? I mean, come on. But you're not thinking that it changes the chemistry. It changes the frequency of the water itself, right?
Yeah.
Big difference.
Well, you're right next to a gaseous state. So as soon as you break it, that's what you wanted anyway, is the gases to form off in different direction.
Yep.
Now you just got to pull the air to one side. So you got to pull a little bit of magnetism on it and pull it out. The hydrogen will not magnetize, so then it'll pull to the other side, and there you go. You got a more efficient system.
Yep.
It's
But
a
oxygen. Did you know that oxygen is magnetic at high levels?
Yeah. That's why
awesome.
That's why crystalline forms are magnetic in one way.
That
because
makes
they're
sense.
built with oxygen atoms inside their crystalline structure.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. What are we looking at here, Bernie? Looks like a worm.
And here I am demonstrating exactly what you were speaking of. Oops, is it my bandwidth's gonna allow it, or are they gonna allow it? So look at all of the bubbles.
Yep.
And then look closer and then see the millions of tinier, smaller atomic hydrogen bubbles alongside the bigger clusters of other isotopes of hydrogen as well as oxygen that is happening in this jar. And then you see that cloud, and that cloud is all hydrogen forming out of the water there. And this reaction has zero electric current input whatsoever.
Have you ever put a match
the red
to your
state
hydrogen?
coil and the black state aluminum? Oh yeah, all the time.
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah.
This is the battery experiment. You made the saltwater battery. I remember this one.
Oh yeah, majority of the different jars and experiments I'm doing are exactly that, different variations of saltwater batteries. and reactors, but that it's also including hydrogen production as well in this. And well, look at the rate of, you get your electrodes into the metal states, and then it creates the coherence with water to amplify and have that spontaneous hydrogen creation reaction. And
Looks like a
then
lot of
also, right? And then you put in high voltage, and then it goes up by 1,000,000-fold, and you have on-site water to hydrogen fuel production at a high efficiency.
So do you ever put this anode and cathode in at the same material with the salt water to make a capacitor?
Yeah, I've got all sorts of different variations, designs, and intentionalities of exactly what you're speaking. But yeah, this was just a specific proof of concept of demonstrating the hydrogen production, and it's throughout the entire saltwater electrolyte within this jar or saltwater battery, not just right off the coil or the electrode of the copper and aluminum, but happening throughout the entire solution of salt water, which is quite a exponential increase of effect when generating hydrogen through electrolysis. Right?
I wonder
Usually
if that
it's
works
only
with.
just off the cathode that you'll get the hydrogen.
I wonder if that would work with gold and silver. I don't know.
Oh yeah, I've done the same. I've reproduced it with that. And yeah, the key part is the nano-coated black state anode and the red pink crystal state cathode as your
Interesting.
electrodes. But that's alchemy, and we'll get back to finishing showing Peter Lindman's demonstration of the homopolar motor in the Badlands series.
Yes, let's break it down.
Exactly. Sorry. Just saying, you two gentlemen, Gerald and Nathan, couldn't be the more perfect gentlemen to be with to break down what we're watching here as well, and applying the next generations of how to use this science and discovery technology into everybody's own designs and what everyone watching is working on themselves, right? And we all got to get to that state where we have our own free energy generators that are powering a certain amount of our own, electronics home systems, and just continuously strive for more, build it up, and get off grid as much as possible.
Oh yeah.
Right
brush on the perimeter here and another brush on the perimeter here, which would be one brush here, one brush here, and one brush here, both on the perimeter. Now, there's an absolute dead short circuit right around the outside here that wouldn't have to go through any magnets at all. And it certainly is. We would all be hard pressed to explain to you why any EMF should be present at all under these circumstances. So let's turn it on and see what happens.
Blast shield.
Thank you, Eric, our safety director.
Yeah.
There.
as you can see, you knocked the brush.
This is general lab operations here. What do you estimate the cost of this experimental machine was just to build?
Oh, most of these things are built from junk and stuff that we've had around the shop over the years. The cost of keeping this shop open over the years has been an astronomical amount of food money.
You don't get funded for this research?
No, we've never been funded to run these experiments. Michael.
And 30 years later, Gerald, Nathan, how much funding do you guys have putting into your work? How much
big
funding do
zero.
you guys get?
I think I have minus.
A
Big zero?
huge amount of zero.
Oh,
Yeah,
well,
astronomical.
third, right here as
Yeah.
well. And 30 years later, sadly, nothing has changed. Well,
but NASA
everybody watching,
supplies.
share these, put it out, and petition governments to fund us, right?
But Bernie, you know what we're doing wrong? NASA supplies a ton of money to people that aren't doing anything. Maybe we should do nothing. We'll get paid. Just kidding. Just kidding.
Oh, hold on. Let me dust off my math skills, okay? Let me think. I hope my son passed Algebra 2 and Geometry and taught it to him in 3 months for both subjects together.
Wow.
Maybe I could just dust that off a little bit and work on it.
Yeah, just a little.
Yeah, we'll get some
Only
funding
if you
then.
add AI into what you're doing somehow.
Yeah.
No.
I got to get my thesaurus out so I can get some nice big words.
That's
so that I
right.
can put them into sentences too.
So we can use the theoretical physicist technical. I got nothing.
Yeah, right. We got to use big words and theoretical physics to debunk the physical, actual demonstrations and experiments that you're watching and that are being explained to you right now that they refuse to fund. And on that note, let's get back to Peter Lindman and Eric.
I've worked together for 5 years and never been funded.
Do you ever expect a payoff from it?
I'm not into predicting the future. But anyway, what we would like to do,
You just like to see the equipment work.
we're here running fundamental experiments in physical space.
Right, so product's not the end run. You're experimenting, you're research.
Once we understand the phenomena that we're dealing with, hundreds of thousands of commercial products will be available. But there's no sense trying to run for a product when we still don't understand fully what's happening. So anyway, let's take a look at the output from this. And as we can see, the EMF coming from this arrangement is slightly off the screen. We have to raise the... so the EMF is even greater when we put the brushes at these locations. Your guess is as good as mine as to why that's true. Now, there was another experiment which we're not set up to do that Michael and I originally did in the original set of experiments, and we put both of the brushes, instead of out here at the perimeter, we put one here, one right here on the shaft, and another right here on the shaft, almost touching each other. And when we ran the machine, we got the same fundamental output as what you just saw, as if the brushes were way out here on the perimeter.
See, that I find very strange and interesting, that because you'd think that there'd be a higher differential between if you had the brushes, further out than both right there at the center. And I guess I wonder if they tested having them, one in the middle, one on the out. If that could have made a difference, but
well, you have to have one on the shaft and one on the outside of the magnet.
Yeah.
Isn't that what he's doing here?
Yeah. Well, I believe so.
Hold
on the shaft, and another right here on the shaft, almost touching each other. And when we ran the machine, we got the same fundamental output as what you just saw, as if the brushes were way out here on the perimeter.
Oh, you're right. You're right.
Yeah, right. So interesting that it doesn't make a difference between the two different positions like that, because intuitively, like you just suspected, you'd suspect that be different.
Same amplitude of the wave.
Same amplitude of the wave, same current. So there's.
What's the amount of power being generated here, actually?
Well, in this particular device, this is a very small disk. It's a very low speed. It's a very small amount of magnetism. Quite frankly, the amount of power under this demonstration is quite low.
But were you successful in heating up a wire?
Oh, we were very successful in heating up a wire.
Okay, now what was the gauge and length of the wire?
And boom, right there. Listen to Eric Dollard getting excited and pointing out crucial parts here of heating up the wire. Like, oh, that's actually using amperage. That's actually putting usable work and taking some of that energy out in from the heat, right? And then, as we're about to hear, then getting the details on how to actually calculate the exact energy that they were producing and using in that.
Awesome.
Gauge the length of the wire. I don't even know whether we have that. Let's see. What we did was we had this apparatus right here.
Okay, a current transformer, CT.
This is two brushes and a current transformer. And we can duplicate this experiment by hand right now. What do we have to do? Measure the resistance in this, hook it to the scope.
No, it has to be short-circuited and measured with a radio frequency milliamp meter. Should take a little bit of time to set up, but you said that you witnessed heating of a conductor. Was it that conductor that heated up?
This was the one, the very one, holding it in your hand.
What gauge is that conductor? About 8 stranded? Show it to Chris. He would know the wire gauge right off.
10 gauge.
10 gauge stranded.
Yeah.
Okay, and the length is about what? 6 inches.
5. Yeah,
5
6
inches.
inches.
And about roughly how hot would you say it got?
You were holding it.
It became uncomfortable after a while.
Okay, that's about 110 degrees, 115 degrees. So if anyone wants to take the effort with the length, the gauge of wire, and temperature rise over a period of about how long would you say?
Oh, 10 seconds.
10 seconds?
15.
So that would give the inquiring member of the audience that wants to perform the calculations the amount of energy its device produced.
So you feel
we calculated that there was a number of amperes running
for 10 gauge to get noticeably warm that fast, the current would roughly be 100 amps.
So you believe that well-built models of this are definitely avenues of real research?
Oh, absolutely.
Oh, absolutely.
Without a doubt.
Which would resolve some of the problems of the DC motor technologies that are trying to be developed to be harnessed to the end machine, homopolar, unipolar technologies. It seems that the process of that everybody seems to be headed into has narrowed the science, and instead of branching outward into other aspects of the disk technology, we have discovered a way to be able to resolve the AC problem, which has been people have been trying to discover that quite some time. Even in the 1888 information, the questions were risen: why can we not create an AC waveform out of this disk technology?
Wasn't that the problem Tesla resolved with the complementary apparatus, the multipolar machine? It was the same thing. For many years, people struggled with direct current, and then all of a sudden, AC was the way out.
Exactly.
Now we have an exactly analogous situation occurring with a different technology.
Right.
And it seems that the disk technology will not be a generator of electrical energy, but a phenomenon that, when harnessed, will become what I would call an engine of power, which would then subsequently the motive driving force, say, of an apparatus like the parametric transformer or the reluctance generator, as we call it. Any comments, Peter?
I feel that this phenomena is definitely in its infancy. I've not seen any books or technical papers on producing a direct AC output from a disk type of generator before. And I don't know of any electrical theory of induction which would suggest an explanation as to the kinds of behaviors that we're seeing here. Do any of you electrical engineers have any comment on that?
Did you try doing this without the electric motor and with an air motor or?
No, but I can assure you that the signal is related to the disk, is from the disk. Absolutely.
That would be one experiment to pursue.
Oh, absolutely. Again, the crudity of the experiment is based upon the amount of money that we do not have.
But what do you feel would be a realistic number to begin some
basic? Could we demonstrate to you that, I mean, if we turn the power off to this generator and still see the signal as it slows down?
Because this is not a permanent magnet.
Right, it's not a permanent magnet. It has a field and everything, so when we turn it off, it's completely off. And and as it slows down, the signal is still on there. Would you believe that it's really from the generator and not from the motor?
Are you going to spin it by hand, maybe?
No, we'll bring it up to speed with the motor and then turn all the power of the motor off as it's spinning.
Right, and the inertia will
carry the thing and continue to produce the signal on the oscilloscope.
Couldn't still be generated by the spinning motor?
Eric, you feel that? No, because it would be in an open circuit. All those fields.
Well, that's a valid experiment. Obviously, in closer detail, the apparatus is necessary, but it'll slow down slow enough even with the drag.
Higher. That's fine. All the power of the motor is off.
All right, the watt meter reads 0.
Yeah.
Let's do it again with the camera on, the input watt meter and input amp meter.
Okay, I got everything in there in this one.
So this is just to suggest that the power that we're seeing here, the signal here, is being generated by the generator and not the motor. The watt meter on the motor is 0. The signal is still coming from the generator as it slows down.
That looks pretty good to me.
Now, it would be interesting to figure out what the critical speed is that the EMF suddenly starts to drop, because the EMF appears directly independent of the frequency here, which is definitely novelty with regard to the law of electromagnetic induction, which involves direct proportion to rate of change per seconds.
As far as the height here?
Exactly. One other thing I'd like to point out, too, is in fact the distortion in the waveform indicates triple harmonic components, which, when you start to study this mathematically, become the fundamental pattern of so-called free energy. The fundamental frequency exists with regard to volts or amps, as we've shown, don't directly correlate with what we're interested in, and the quote Steinmetz are mathematical fictions. The power is a double frequency quantity or second harmonic.
I paused it here because absolutely crucial what Eric Dollard's talking and discussing, and also just because I figured you guys would love the laugh of him quote right there of math. What was it? Math. I'm gonna have to replay it, but basically saying math is nothing. Here we go.
All great inventions.
It would be interesting to figure out what the critical speed is that the EMF suddenly starts to drop.
You know why that wire didn't continuously heat and just explode on them? When they ran the AC, it left cooling time between the magnets. So
compared to DC, if it was DC, then it would, correct?
Yeah, because it's a solid magnet, so then it's continuing to build energy and heat. That's the friction aspect of the DC. It's solid on. So it's not a PWM, it's a solid on. So it's then going to heat up. The only way to cool down DC is to pulse it with PWM, which they just did because they moved the magnets in a different, configuration. So they created a space where it can cool down a little bit. That's why it didn't go any higher. Now, if they had left it as one magnet, then they would have fried that wire probably within a minute and a half, and it would have gone up to over 1,000 amps.
Gotcha. So that's why that couldn't be applied or demonstrated on other versions or types of like the homopolar generators,
right there, Gerald.
but is a new feature of this one because of the AC sine wave that they've got or been able to produce through the alternating poles of the magnetic fields rotating.
That's what this creates. This creates an AC sine wave. This is north, south, all the way around. It's six magnets, but it wouldn't be like you said, solid state, because solid state would be one big magnet, and then it would heat it up. But these are like north, south, all the way around in that configuration. So every time it hits, it's like a pulse.
Yep.
This was created it goes on a motor like this, and I put a pot on top, and it spins, and it heats the water in it like super quick. And the power it takes to do it is nothing. Like, I'll do a demonstration. That's why this was built a long time ago. I've had it running multiple times, but I'll do a demo and a video on it to show you heating hot water is a lot easier. Yeah,
absolutely.
There you go.
I look forward to that.
By the way, you notice they're using heat and cold and adjusting it in order to get the correct outputs.
Yes.
I keep telling people that, and they're not understanding the actual relationship there in voltage.
Since you taught me that, I've been using that as a parameter in my system. What a difference of control. Like when you start playing with temperature and using it as voltage and then taking it away, man, the control is crazy. And the aluminum
it's a huge hidden aspect of the technology, because magnetic fields like weaken when it gets hotter, and like you're changing all the properties of the metals, the circuits, everything. Like it's, and
but
then
it doesn't
also
have to burn.
Inversely, the super exactly, because inversely you design it as a capacitor, superconductor with a harmonic, superconductor harmonic system, where then it cools and it starts taking the heat from the radiant energy of the environment and creates this harmonic endothermic reaction, and then it's super cooling itself, thus becoming exponentially more efficient from the super cold state that it creates.
Well, one of the reasons why they don't see a room temperature superconductor is because a room temperature superconductor can control the temperature of the room by the very flow of the electromagnetism, the scalar, the charge, the positive, the negative. It all comes into play. And that's a room temperature superconductor. When you learn how to manipulate the fields to control the temperature in your system and in the room, man, I don't even know how to explain the feeling of watching that happen. It's incredible.
You do know your coil, Gerald, is bordering on superconductivity.
Yeah, I know. In fact, when you put certain voltages in it, and I can prove this now with the meter, my second meter will be here today. You can literally show the superconductivity past a certain voltage and at a certain frequency, and you can change those to show it at a lower or higher rate. I'm telling you, superconductivity at room temperature is a lot simpler than people think, but the scientific community either is looking in the wrong direction or they don't understand the principles that you have to control the electrostatic, the magnetic, the positive, the negative, the charge, where the charge goes, where the heat goes, moving the heat to the cold, allowing the cold to compress the heat. When you learn all those things, it flows like a living system.
Hey, Gerald, you can't get the flow without the hot and the cold.
You're right. Without the hot and the cold, because of the way that the flow of electricity works, it's enveloped in it. It's part of it.
There you go.
You have to understand how the cold and the heat will affect your voltage and your amps. And if you do, you can literally change all four of those parameters.
Well, that was the key to superconductivity in a coil is you have to take the center of it and drop the temperature by 20 to 30 degrees. Then you can get it close to superconductivity.
Or you can heat up the inside of the core, transferring the cold to a different place, but holding only enough heat that you need to control the transfer between the cold and heat. And it's all compressed in that one spot in your open core. So you can literally manipulate whether the heat goes to your aluminum plate, like if it's sitting underneath, or whether or not you could dissipate it to the 12 pickup coils that are the surrounding. It's all relative. And when you know how to use those voltages that can control the heat, that uses the heat to control the voltage, it's kind of like a balancing system. And once you learn how to do that, you can literally push everything in any direction that you want.
So when are you going to build a triple coil then, Gerald?
Well, before we get to that,
you know why I'm asking, right?
But how about before we get to that and before the show is done, Gerald, why don't you set up a little demonstration of exactly what you're speaking of for all of us? Because we'd love to learn, please.
I'd love to, but the timing that we're on, it's 8:30. And Fair. I'm in my house and everybody's asleep, so I can't do certain experiments.
Well, it'll be by like 11 or 12 because
I have to set things. Yeah, certain experiments I have to set up. That's the unfortunate part with me. I can't just show on certain lives because I'm in a house with 8 people, right? And so I don't have a lab to do safe experiments with. I have to pick my timing. So I apologize. I can't do anything live today, like right now anyway. It's 8:30 in the morning where I am. So
do you know why he needs a triple coil, Bernie?
No, yes, please do tell. Well, the third phase of
he's playing with cold heat at that point. He's got to create the center as ice cold, but heat on the top and the bottom to create the vortexes.
Do you remember me saying in a live, I'm building something that is like next level and it's really throwing my head for a loop? Yeah. Well, it's the third coil, but it also introduces water and it introduces fog. So this is getting to the level where I'm putting the temperatures into water that's flowing in different directions and allowing the particles, the fog to contain the electrostatics. And then I'm going to pull it all together and use it as one system. So that's what I've been working on. It's actually 2 1/4-inch tubing, one wrapping the other way, and then there's a coil that's 3-dimensionally wrapped between each layer. So when you see it, it's just going to be like, how'd you do that? I don't even know how I'm doing it. It's a lot of work.
That's how. So a lot of work.
Yeah, it's a lot of work. And go ahead.
Your superconductivity is going to be super high with the triple coil. You're going to explode that.
And introducing water as well. So I believe I'm going to be able to produce maybe a high order of steam and maybe even cryogenics. I can't promise you that. It's just a theory as to the way that I'm seeing how all these systems interact and how we can control them. We might actually be able to control really super cold temperatures and super hot heated steam through those same measures. Not sure yet, though. Working on it.
What type of water are you putting in there? Are you using any salt or?
I haven't even. Go ahead.
Using distilled water, salt water, regular water, tap water.
Well, I'm going to start with distilled because that's what I used in my hydrogen experiments. Absolutely. But who knows? I'll probably change between experiments. I'm going to add things to the water as well. So
we'll have to collaborate on these designing and running these experiments because I'm working on a series of very similar, exactly that pretty much, and about to start setting up a series of parallel experiments where it's like the same anode cathode electrodes in multiple setups with either altering energy inputs with currents, voltages, stuff like that, and or different electrolytes, different different types of salt, but then also not just salts, but a couple other. Well, sorry, not just sodium salts, a couple other element salts.
Yeah, there's many salts. Yeah.
I'd love to see your experiment do resonance in there, Bernie, with double coil.
That's a whole other one I also need to do, and we need to set up and design 100%.
Because once you find resonance, the frequency will change. It'll drop. So you'll know when you find it. It won't be the same frequency on both. One will drop. So just so you know, it'll be easier to find with an oscilloscope.
Oh, I know. I saw. See, I must create a wish list, need list sort of thing, and like links for all of that on Amazon. And oscilloscope is on the top of the list, as well as I need the Variac and a couple other different things.
You know what? I think a $60 oscilloscope, if we can find one that's really good for everybody, I think that's what we should get.
I picked up a cheap one.
We should group order from Alibaba on China and get like 6 or 10, and it'll be like $20 or something. There we go.
Yeah.
I ordered the $90 one that we talked about last week.
Okay.
So what I did is I made a dream list of all the things I wanted, and I save up and I just knock them off one at a time. That might help you. But yeah, I ordered the oscilloscope that I believe it was Ian that had brought it up. Might have been Sean. 99.9 RMS count, I believe it's got on it. I'll get it today, and I'm going to do testing with it. It apparently does 10 megahertz. So
nice.
I need something like that because the scope I have now only does 1.
Well, you got to also focus your scope. It's you got to pull the thing apart so you can see individual waves, so you can identify them.
I can do that. I get down to 10 US, which I think is micro.
Well, we're definitely playing the Sheila Raman presentation after.
Yeah, everybody's been talking about her. I've never even heard of her.
You need to see it because she is advanced in exactly what you were just describing and talking about, and takes it to a whole another level that we all also need to, because it's what's the missing next step in developing all of our technologies and designs.
Like we said before, it's all the same principle. We're just finding different ways of getting to the same point. It's all coming together.
Yes, it is.
Yep.
It truly is. And Infinite Paradox, by all means, if you'd like to join the stream and show some coils off, I will post, or I guess Nathan,
filled with liquid. Look, I'm interested.
My email or your email in your live chat for Infinite Paradox, and if you email us right now, we can send you the link to join. Always down to see more coils.
Can I show you something, Bernie, real quick?
Always, of course.
I want to show you something that Gerald showed us, and it's significant. Right here. He was showing on the right, you see both of Gerald's, right? On the left, you're going to see, oh God, I can't even think of the name right now. You're going to see Sean's ring in his Tesla coil. You notice the exact same wave shows up in both? And I'm not just talking the ring itself, right after the ring.
All right. I like this. I like where this is going.
Gerald's got that in there. That's why he's getting his scalar wave inside of his coil.
Yep.
That's exactly why he's getting it. So,
and it's certain resonances. It's crazy. So go ahead. I'm sorry, Nathan.
Yeah, well, he's got a resonance ring in his coil. That's the beautiful thing. There are two parts of it that are resonant to each other, and he found them. And that's just incredible that he can wind that thing, probably not knowing it was in there in the beginning, and then finding it was absolutely amazing.
Yep. That's exactly how it was, Nathan. I didn't know it was in there at first, and then once I found resonance, wow. whole other story. Then you start playing in another realm.
Well, then you see the amplification afterwards, right?
Yeah.
So he hits the ring, and this is what I try to tell people all the time. After you get to the last thing of the ring, then you have to multiply it right there. That's like when I hit the piezo button in my experiment. That's what happens right there. That multiplication, the amplification, all happens right there.
Yeah, you got to smack it at the right time.
That's right.
And that resonance.
So anyway, it was just something interesting because of the way, all the coils and stuff work.
Absolutely. Absolutely crucial aspect of it. All right. Back to Peter Lindman and Michael. Oh my gosh, I haven't said his last name once. Hopefully it gets said